try and attempt to say this with a very heavy heart. I'm feeling very emotional and through clenched teeth. Rich benefactors gifted museums, libraries and parks to the people of Sheffield, and local residents paid for the trees that were planted on their roads. They trusted that the local authority would administer and maintain these assets in perpetuity and for the benefit of the people of Sheffield. Calvin has studied local history, and perhaps he has a better understanding than many of us of the rich legacy that we have inherited. The forethought and generosity of people from previous generations have gifted us with facilities, amenities, green spaces and magnificent street trees. These are a community asset. They contribute to the opportunities, well-being and quality of life of residents. But it seems now that these are to become luxuries which we can no longer afford. Our street trees have been handed over to a multinational company for 25 years via a secret self-monitoring contract. I'm very disappointed today that the courts have not required the disclosure of this contract. The terms of it have created the context for what is happening in Sheffield today. What happens when elected representatives are no longer accountable to the people they are supposed to serve? What exactly is in that contract? What exactly are we not allowed to see? Why are we not allowed to see it? And why did the council enter into a secret contract? What exactly are you hiding from us, the people of Sheffield? Councillor Julie Dole at Wednesday's council meeting warned of catastrophic consequences if the contract was not delivered. Why, oh why, did our council enter into a contract that threatened catastrophic consequences and locked us into that contract for 25 years? The stumps now lining our streets are totems to the death of accountability, reminders that in appeasing a multinational, our council is prepared to try to use anti-trade union legislation, is prepared to put residents engaged in peaceful protest under surveillance, and is prepared to press for custodial sentences against people trying to prevent destruction of healthy trees by peaceful means. The council tries to portray protesters as a tiny minority. They don't seem to be aware of or to care about the many, many people that we have met on our streets who are mourning the loss of their local trees. The housebound octogenarian, no longer able to gaze out of her window and appreciate the changing of seasons through the tree outside her house. The new mum suffering postnatal depression, who gained some comfort from wheeling her pram along tree-lined streets. The children reduced to tears because they cannot understand why adults have destroyed the healthy tree on their doorstep. The families who recall crunching through leaves with their children, collecting conkers and looking forward to the spring returning. And the residents distressed that the Living War Memorial in their street is still under threat. More and more research is telling us loudly and clearly that trees and green spaces are essential to our mental health. Our council been involved in what has been called environmental vandalism on an industrial scale. And experts locally, nationally and internationally are looking on in total disbelief. Mr. Justice Bales describes a change in the position of Calvin since the July trial. But Calvin hasn't changed. Calvin was passionate about retaining our trees in July, and he remains passionate about retaining our trees now. And very many of the trees now standing would not be standing had it not been for the intervention of this campaign. What has changed is that Sheffield Council, its councillors and officers, have become more and more desperate to eradicate effective, peaceful protests. The street trees are the canary in the mine. As revenues fall and social care and children's service costs rise, we are reaching the point where there is little or no money for anything but statutory services. The trees are just the first sign of what is to come. The trees are not the only victim of our current battle. Community cohesion has gone, accountability has gone, transparency is thrown away, and trust in our local authority has gone too. Today, Calvin is going to pay a very heavy price for his determination to stop the fellings. None of us should underestimate that sacrifice, and I'd like to call on everyone here to support him in any way that they possibly can in the coming months. And on behalf of all of us, I would like to thank Calvin for caring about our city and trying to preserve our trees. Many times in history, people have paid a price for resisting things they believed to be wrong. And at some future time, Calvin will be seen not as a criminal, but as someone who was trying to do what was right, and not for himself, but for our whole community. Thank you.
What a fantastic speech. I'm feeling quite emotional. Thank you very much, Annette. That was absolutely wonderful. I'd like to welcome Paul, Mr. Paul Brook, please, to speak to you as well. He's got some really good stuff to say, I'm sure.
Thank you. Well, let's hope so. I suppose to take a leaf out of Calvin's book. Sorry. Take a leaf out of Calvin's book. I decided I wasn't going to talk about the trees. Bracken's done that very eloquently, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about Calvin. For those of you lots of you know Calvin, and for those of you who don't know Calvin, obviously Calvin's a local historian, writer, a keen camper apparently. Very keen camper, having set up a camp in Endcliffe Park more than 2 years ago. And obviously, looking at the amount of pink out here, he's obviously a fashion icon as well. It's worth noting that yesterday, it was a year ago that Calvin was arrested. And obviously back in July, Calvin was one of the named people in the High Court, and that's led to being here today. So I was thinking last night about in what way would I kind of talk about Calvin. I thought actually it's better if I let Calvin speak for himself. So I thought I'd take a lesson from Sheffield City Council. So I trawled through his Facebook page. So just some of the comments from Calvin's Facebook page. Very enjoyable day tour guiding as part of the Heritage Open Days. Nice crowd, sold a few books. Gotta love people who willingly let a slightly strange bloke walk them around for 2 hours talking about drain covers. Today, I've mostly been misbehaving. In our own campaign, there have been folk who never supported direct action. Some have said that police involvement was bad news for us, as folk would see us as criminals. They didn't. Of course, militant action works best when it's part of a wider strategy and not just done for the sake of it. And that is what we have done. Every day that goes by justifies what I and others have done. Without us, we would have been beaten a long time ago. One day's action equals 100 days thinking. It's not good to have a pavement getting in the way of a tree. This pavement should have been destroyed and replacement pavement laid somewhere else in the city. The destroying of our pavements and paths is always a last resort. Calvin commenting on rules. As a regular in cafes, we can sort out the following, please. It's brown sauce on sausage sarnies and tomato sauce on bacon sarnies. Society has rules for a reason, people. Cheered myself up by unfriending a few people for random reasons. Talking on the heritage in Meersbrook. The area has the best surviving examples I know of temporary cheap wooden street name signs dating from the Second World War. So something expected to last just a few years can still be in place 75 years on, while more permanent fixtures are removed for no good reason. Much of the local history I write about has survived by accident, yet things destroyed or removed are usually done so deliberately. Very pleased that TJ Hughes' pink shirts are really very pink. On council press statements, Brian Lodge. We work in partnership with the Woodland Trust. Woodland Trust. No, you don't. Paul Billington. If the Woodland Trust are going to end our working relationship, they should have told us. Woodland Trust. We never had a working relationship. I'm going to court to plead sanity as my defence. Lastly, I'd just like to send a brief message to Justice Mayles. In our history, democracy and the rights of citizens have their foundations on the shoulders of lawbreakers. Oppression and injustice has always been protected and legitimised by lawmakers. Power to the peaceful!
Wow, you really did have some really good stuff to say. That was brilliant. And of course, in Calvin's words, what an excellent idea. And no wonder we love Calvin so much. That was fantastic. I'd like to introduce you now to Professor Jennifer Saw, who's been a brilliant supporter of the campaign and part of the campaign. She's written lots of excellent articles for the Huffington Post that have done a lot to publicise the campaign far and wide, which we really appreciate. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
I'm honoured and really deeply humbled to have the opportunity to speak on Calvin's behalf. I'm honoured and deeply humbled to have the opportunity to speak on Calvin's behalf. But before this week, I wouldn't have thought anything or anyone could get me to wear pink. Look at me now. In my research, I write a lot on dishonesty and underhanded political manipulation. Spending so much time thinking about those has made me even more impressed by someone who embodies their opposite. Calvin is perhaps the most honest and courageous person I know. His goal is to save the healthy trees of Sheffield and to expose the myriad ways in which the Council and Amy have been lying and working against the interests of Sheffield and its people. His method is a simple one. He stands under trees. He has been standing under trees for 2 years now. Sometimes he suggests that others stand under trees. He is always completely honest and forthright about what he's doing because he knows that it is right and he's willing to put himself on the line for that cause. This is peaceful civil disobedience of the most admirable sort. Henry David Thoreau wrote, "When a man's conscience and the law clash, it is his conscience he must call out." We all, in some sense, know that this is true, but hardly any of us manage to live up to it. Calvin does. And for this, the council seeks to put him in prison for 2 years. I thought I'd do a little compare and contrast between the two sides here. The council and Amy are in the process of destroying £66 million worth of irreplaceable trees for no good reason. Calvin stood under some trees and prevented them being chopped down. Amy felled a tree into a person's garden without asking their permission or even warning them that they were doing this. The council defended this, but the health and safety executive has now placed them in special measures for this serious violation. Calvin said on Facebook that he'd really like even more people to stand under trees with him. The council has hired private detectives to follow and photograph law-abiding citizens because they might in future break the injunction. Calvin stood under some trees and prevented them being chopped down. The council has intimidated members of the public by telling them they are breaking the injunction and threatening jail time when they're merely walking down the street, standing on their own property, or standing in a public park. Calvin said on Facebook that sometimes civil disobedience is necessary. The council has lied in writing about the content of the injunction that they were granted. Calvin has never been anything but scrupulously honest and open. The council has spent a fortune taking peaceful protesters to court. Calvin stood under some trees and prevented them being chopped down. The council spent taxpayers' money to charge an innocent member of an opposition party with breaking the injunction, even though their own evidence made it clear that she had not done so, leading the judge to throw out the case. Calvin said that Amy and the council are behaving so badly that we need to resist them. I think it should be very, very clear who the villains and the heroes are in this story. I hope the judge recognizes this and Calvin walks out a free man.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'd like to introduce you now to co-leader of STAG and great supporter of Calvin, always, I believe.
Accused of being his dad.
And accused of being his father even, yes. Chris Rust, everybody.
Yeah, it may even be true, I have no idea. I'm not going to say any more because what's been said is fantastic and sums it up completely. So all I'm going to say is a large number of trees have been chopped down. We can't get them back. They were healthy trees in the majority of cases. I suspect that almost all of them, the healthy ones, could have been saved. But the council had 40 days, a little while ago, to fell 400 trees before Christmas. That's 10 a day. I think they're managing about 3 a week. Immediately after after Justice Mayles awarded his judgment and injunction, we've been talking to council officers, including our friend Paul Billington, about could we talk, could we have some negotiations? And Paul actually, to be fair to him, was saying, yeah, I think we do need to talk. But as soon as the judgment was awarded, he said, I don't think the senior councils involved are likely to want talks. Yeah, they thought they'd won. Well, here we are about a month later, and next week we're going to have some exploratory talks with the council. We can't promise, because every talk we've had so far has been them talking at us. But they wouldn't have agreed to that if it hadn't been for the phenomenal resistance of Calvin and many other people, persons genuinely unknown. Some of them here, not necessarily shouting about it, who are doing an amazingly courageous job on the street. And that's why we're able to do that. So, keep the faith. There's an awful lot of good trees still standing, and I still believe we can save them. Well done, everybody. Well done, everybody.
Thank you, Chris. It's a very exciting prospect of negotiations. It would be wonderful indeed if they lead to something positive like saving the trees and changing the mind of the council who've been so ridiculously stubborn thus far. So we've got one more speaker. I would like to introduce you to the fabulously entertaining Sebastian Weasel. Look at those shoes!
Thank you very much. Just a couple of announcements. One is a cynical marketing appeal. The Rochdale Herald runs a online t-shirt shop, and as of today, you'll be able to buy t-shirts that support Calvin directly, with all profits going to Stag. I'm getting there. The first design, lots of you looking around my age more, may remember a Pepsi advert back in the day, which went, if memory serves, lip-smacking, thirst-quenching, ace-tasting, motivating, good-buzzing, cool-talking, fine-walking, fast-living, ever-giving, cool-fizzing Pepsi. I've rewritten this as tree-saving, risk-taking, pink-wearing, council-baiting, good-doing, hard-talking, far-reaching, zone-breaching, never-failing, injunction-breaking Calvin. That one will be on sale today, and hopefully next week we'll have another design up with the quote on it that Calvin is inside. Well, inside there, rather than inside. Oops. That basically form the, I would, what I'd really like is on Monday for, and we may misattribute the quote to Nelson Mandela or something, but so that we've also got on the site for prospective parents, prospective grandparents, the original tree hugger logo has been amended with tiny on top, and that'll be available on Baby Grows. So, great Christmas present. They come in sizes from Jack Scott to Neil Gibson. Sorry, 6 months to 24 months. The Rochdale Herald editor has actually sort of taken quite an interest in this case, and he's asked me to say, we obviously don't know what's going to happen in there. One of the options, as I understand it, is a fine, and he's asked me to let you know that if either of the defendants, one or both, receives a fine of up to £1,000, the Rochdale Herald will pay that. Now, I don't normally do serious, and I don't normally do rabble-rousing. I leave that to Dilma. But I'm always brought down every time I look at the comment section in the Sheffield Star on Facebook, where alongside all the great comments about how brave the direct action, people taking direct action are, you get comments saying how stupid, how pointless. Now, it was a brave act, but a lot of people thought it stupid and pointless to throw yourself under the King's horse at the Derby. It's a brave act, but some people said it was stupid and pointless to go up and face down the shotguns on Kinder Scout. It's a brave action, and a lot of people thought it was stupid and pointless for an old black woman not to give up her seat on a bus in Alabama. Sheffield City Council history has got a tendency to look at this sort of action and judge it extremely favourably. Now, I'm not a brave man. I like to think of myself more as a profoundly stupid and pointless man. So I'm going to support Calvin by wearing this stupid and pointless hat. Thank you very much. Stand with Calvin.
Thank you, Sebastian. That was perfect, fabulous, very exciting. I'm looking forward to getting one of those T-shirts. To finish off, I think we should have Dave Dillner come here and do a bit of rabble-rousing. What do you say? Yeah? Dave Dillner. Thanks everyone for coming.
I'm not going to say very much this morning. That's why. Parliament itself would not exist in its present form if it hadn't been for people breaking the law. That is fact. Just remember that. I hope Justice Mayles does this morning. I just want to thank everyone that's spoken before me this morning. Absolutely superb speeches. Bracken, you made me cry. Gonna finish with 4 words. Power to the peaceful!
Power to the peaceful!
Sorry, I did forget to mention, someone mentioned it over there, yes, all the Calvin t-shirts are available in this fetching shade of pink.
People eat trees, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
I could find out for you whether it's like in Bristol or
they send you a little file. Oh, yeah.
It's like we organise it for our cultures in Yorkshire.
Well, I'm not sure because I keep hearing.
Okay, well you come back now.
Well, I know.